Name's Robert, and I'm an addict. Robert. All right. Let's take a deep breath and do the wee version of the Serenity Prayer to open this thing up. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, so last week we wrapped up resentments and the fear section. Hopefully everybody finished those up on homework over the week. And then now we got to kind of brush up a little bit on the selfishness and the crowd favorite, shame, guilt, sex. That'll be the final one, which that works out appropriate. That's the last stuff you're going to write right before you do the fifth step, so you have the least amount of that stuff laying around. With that being said, I also had this little handout here. It's a basic instincts of life, and there's a glossary for different things like the exact and nature, and it breaks down what the definitions of most of the words in the fourth step. And it's on the back side of it. So it's just good little handout to kind of get our minds around some of that selfish stuff. You know, we basically all have this social instinct. We want companionship. We want money, property, prestige. We have self-esteem, pride. Usually most of our resentments and stuff like that are caused because one of those things are affected one way or the other. Security instinct, financial, emotional, mental. We all want to be secure in these different areas. Obviously, we're all men here. We've got a sex drive. We don't want anybody hitting on our wife. That's going to create a resentment. So there's a lot of different things there. It's a good little handout to me to get our minds by looking at it and reviewing our lives, so we can review where we've been the most selfish in our life. For me, my whole life was selfish. Everything was about me, for me, what I could get for me. Every person I met, they represented a commodity to me. If you were a plumber and I thought I was going to need a plumber, I'd be your friend. If you didn't have a skill set that I thought I would ever going to need, I'd kick rocks. I didn't pay much attention to you. I didn't know how to be just kind to somebody for no reason. Most of my life I had an agenda, and if you didn't fit in one of those ways and a means to get what I wanted, then you weren't part of my life. And if you stopped being a part of something that I needed, then it was easy for me to build a case and kick you to the curb for why I didn't need you in my life anymore. I burnt through friends really quick, mostly growing up. Had lots of those little, summertime best friends, but I didn't know how to play well with others. I didn't have traditions to help me figure out how to have safe boundaries with everybody. So thank God for the program of Narcotics Anonymous, man. Because I heard it said, and I really believe it to be true, that the steps will help us from committing suicide, and the traditions will help us from committing homicide. And it's very true. A lot of people, if you're new, the traditions have a practical application in our life as well. Mostly to get out of our selfishness. The traditions are a lot about that, how to be considerate of other people and respecting other people's rights to recover. And anyway, before we get off on that tangent too far away, let's get back on this little, the selfishness section here. And you notice this one does, like the other two that we did last week, so it was like mostly focusing on your top 5. But I like to focus on the big bags of garbage we have going on. That the steps we're going to be working over and over throughout our lives, and what's the biggest obstacle that I'm the most selfishness, and the top 3 or 4 is probably more than adequate for us to get started. Let's see. I was selfish in my sex areas because I cared more about me getting my cookie than I did my wife getting hers. Didn't care if she was in the mood or not. Didn't have any consideration. It was all about me and what I wanted. Very, very selfish in that mantra. Very selfish with my wife as far as with money. Usually I controlled most of the money in the household, and things that I wanted, I made sure were taken care of really, really well. And hers only got taken care of when I knew I was in the doghouse and I needed to come through big for something. when I knew I'd screwed up really, really bad, and it was time to hit the home run out of the park, and throw a lot of money at the situation to make the problems go away. But again, that was a selfish motive, just trying to get the heat off my back. It wasn't being selfish, trying to be just kind and considerate to my wife because I was being loving. So that was an area that I was very selfish in. When it came down to business dealings with people, I was always trying to figure out how I was going to get the best deal. I didn't leave a little meat on the bone for the next guy. I bought low and I sold high on everything that I did try to transact, and that was the way I did people. I was always just trying to wring that extra little bit out of me all the time. Hitting that bubble. I didn't care if I was wasting anybody else's time or anything like that. So let's ask the first question here. What are my top 5 areas in selfishness in my life, such as time, money, etc.? Complete a page for each selfish area. So take 4 or 5. And if you're having problems coming up with 5, ask. We can always ask. Usually the ladies in our life are the most accurate with taking our inventories, so our moms, our wives, our girlfriends, our sisters, other people in recovery, if we want help on this, we want people that are going to be accurate with us. This is an inventory, and accuracy is very important. We don't need sympathizers and co-signers of our bullshit around here. We want people that are going to call us on our crap and tell us the truth. And if you're like me, my first few years, it took a while for the fog to lift. I couldn't see a lot of this kind of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why it's really important when we're new to just keep our eyes on the biggest things that are a problem. Selfish with my time. I don't want to stay late after a meeting and help clean up and put chairs away and maybe mop up, or clean up the coffee maker, or stand out late in the parking lot to talk to that newcomer that their ass is falling off or whatever. I got TV shows on Netflix I want to run home and get to and watch. There's so many different ways that I got a football game. It's the Bears and the Lions or whatever. Some team that really isn't doing well or not. But I got to make this go do this thing, and why it's important to me, right? And what's being a best steward of my life. I have 38 years of total selfishness and self-centeredness to make up for. And I believe that we literally, I do it one interaction with a newcomer at a time, one conversation in the parking lot with somebody at a time, reaching out to those are the ways that I help curb some of my selfishness. Anyway, who are the ones that I hurt most in this area? Like my wife, I took a big toll on her self-esteem, still to this day, it's hard for me to get her to say what movie she wants to go watch, because she always wants to pick the movie she knows I'm going to like, for fear of pissing me off, God forbid, even after all these years of insisting, it's just like, I literally have to try to pick out something nice for her, because she just, and I don't think it's fear of being, that she's going to upset me anymore, but she's just so ingrained in being a people pleaser, and I think she's trying to be kind to me too, that she doesn't want to force me to watch some girl chick flick kind of thing that she knows I really don't want to watch. But I owe that. That's a debt that I owe, because I got away with not doing that for so long that, I could literally go the rest of my life and never watch a movie that I'm interested in ever again with my relationship with my wife, and just do nothing but stuff that she wanted to do. And I still probably wouldn't even out the scales of the way it's been so far. So that's just an area that I think I hurt her, and self-esteem, because she don't even want to speak up for herself sometimes when I know she should. Number 3, what did I do that caused emotional harm, intentionally or unintentional, in my selfishness in this area? And I got to give myself a little bit of a break, because most of the harm that I caused in my selfishness was just because I was oblivious to anybody else's needs, because my needs were so loud. It was the only thing I could listen to. So it was kind of collateral damage, like most of the people I ripped off and stole from. It wasn't that I was mad at these people that I went and did these things. It was, sorry about your luck, but that was just the quickest way I could see an end to the means to me getting what I needed to get. So wherever I thought I could steal something, come up with something, I went and did that. So it was, like I said, it was collateral damage. It wasn't anything personal. And I get to take that today in account when I get screwed over, and every once in a while I get taken advantage of, and I get to chalk it up to the shit I got away with. But back into that area with my wife and the selfishness, I didn't intentionally harm my wife. I was just completely inconsiderate of my wife. So it was kind of an unintentional thing, but I wasn't being considerate nonetheless. Let's see. And which insecurities caused me to act this way? Financial, material, social, sex, and emotional. Every way, shape, or form with my wife. And I'm just using her for an example because she's probably the number one way I was selfish for the longest period of time and the longest duration of a relationship. So that's why I've stuck to that one. It'll be 36 years in December that we've been married, and that is definitely a miracle. And 14 years of that was not very pleasant for her. Anyway, but we stuck together. So back to what it was that was affected, it affected every area of my life with her, social, material, sex, emotional, I took. Don't get me wrong. I was there for my wife when she was, bent up against other people and had things going on. I loved and supported my wife with things, but, emotionally and spiritually at the level that a man should be available to their spouse, spiritually, I had zero in my account to give, So I was completely unavailable. In fact, that was one of the reasons that I hated myself most as a father because I'd had a taste of recovery in younger years. And so I knew that I was not being, ignorance is bliss, right? I got a taste of recovery. So I knew that even though I was providing for my family and keeping a roof over their head and food in their bellies, by all standards, I was checking the boxes of being a somewhat productive member of society. I was not emotionally, spiritually, and really even mentally available to my children. I stole their father from them. Because I was selfishly using dope all the time. I showed up to just enough ball games to satisfy my need that I actually showed up for them once in a while, but it was like the bare minimum. I wasn't the guy that was at every ball game, at every soccer game or every practice and all that kind of stuff. My wife handled most of that stuff, and I just kind of breezed in every once in a while to make the appearance that I did care. But in reality, most of the time, they were just getting in the way of my get high time. And when I was there, I wasn't happy about being there most of the time. I put on the happy face and try to be nice, but inside, I was wanting to be someplace else most of the time. So I wasn't emotionally available to them. Number 5, what actions can I take to become more selfless and considerate of others in this area? So that goes back opposite. Back with my mom, my wife. Taking her to do things that she wants to do. Went to a couple of plays. Again, I try to get her to pick out movies that she wants to watch and sit there and watch, silly Adam Sandler flicks or just stuff that's not up my ballpark that not necessarily in my wheelhouse that I really want to watch. Let her pick out where we go to eat. Let her pick out how she wants things. Even in a house. Well, you guys all know I'm building that house up in Utah, and she trusts my judgment on paint colors because I'm pretty decent with colors for a straight guy. I come up with some pretty cool colors. Stop it. But she knows that I'm pretty good with that kind of stuff. But other little things, what started out, and then initially we were going to build a nice little 900 square foot cabin up there in Utah to retire to, turned into a 2,200 square foot, three-story, 2-story with a loft, place. And just in a lot of ways, I'm perfectly happy living in the trailer that we got up there right now. All our needs were being met, but doing this scratched 2 things off the box. I gave her something. I'm giving her something that she never would have had to. And as a kid, I always wanted to build my own house. So in a way, it was selfless. In another way, it was selfish. I get to do something, cross something off my bucket list that I never thought I was ever going to be able to actually do. And then on the other side of it, I let her make a lot of little decisions that maybe not a lot. I gotta get honest. There's not a whole lot of things that really went completely outside of the box, but I let her make a lot of calls as far as flooring colors, how the kitchen was going to be made, and what kind of sink and what kind of appliances and stuff like that. And I just didn't balk on some things like that, and kind of just threw a little bit a lot more control in the area than I normally would have given. I went out of my way to make sure that even when I was trying to sway her choice to being the choice that I really wanted to make, that she had the final say in a lot of it, and there was a few things that we did that I really didn't want to do that way, but because she wanted it, I did that way. And in relationships, compromising and giving up my will for somebody else, especially my will, and it's going to cost me more work, cost more money. Those are areas that time and money is what it all boils down to, and selfishness, and where I'm going to put my energies and my efforts. So I just try to give back more, and I shared this the other night because my wife just told me, like 2 weeks ago, paid me the highest compliment because we were sharing about working steps, and she's in recovery too, and she looked at me and she's like, and we were talking about something about this process of working the steps that we're kind of doing right now. And I was explaining how much the last round of the step working guide was going compared to the times we'd done it before at the house. And she's like, she says, man, she said, well, you're not the same man you were 5 years ago. And she meant that in such a profound way that I knew that I'd made some ground in that area. Because we can preach a lot of good stuff around these meetings, and I can talk a lot of good hype of recovery when we're in here. But you really want to know how a man's living? Ask their spouse. How's he living at home? When you peek inside that kitchen window at home and they're interacting with their family, how are they living then? It's easy to put on the facade here, sling around some cool words of recovery and impress a bunch of people that may or may not know all that much about this stuff just on book knowledge and stuff like that. But how we are really living is the testament to that. And I saw early on in recovery that one of the biggest things I saw in my first 4-step was after doing it, I had a new level of just how selfish I was in every little area. I was like, because I felt almost like a feeling of impending doom that I'd been so stuck on selfish my whole life. I didn't know how to be selfless. My sponsor had me starting to do things like just go do some random acts of kindness and try not to get caught. Do nice little thing, and don't even tell me. He was telling me, he says, don't even tell me about the things that you're doing. So it was like, just keep it between you and God that you go and do these things. And to me, the realization that, man, I could try, and I've gotten obsessed with doing a lot of different things in recovery and in life in general, and views this obsessive compulsive behavior of mine to make headway in a lot of areas. And there's one area that I know there is no way I'm going to ever be in jeopardy of doing too much. And that is being selfless. I can try my best to be the most selfless human being that I can and make it my daily mantra and mission in life. And I'm barely going to scratch the surface of what some people do naturally. And that's truth. That's truth. It's ingrained in me, man. I mean, King Baby between my ears is just rattling all the time, pulling my strings. I'm never going to be a Gandhi kind of guy, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with chiseling out a chunk of my life and saying, okay, I'm gonna do this much recovery and this much and giving back on a consistent basis, and just like anytime I share it all the time too, that no good deed goes unpunished. And it's absolutely true. No matter what the good deed is, it always winds up turning into a little bit more than we wanted to do. I want to give this and it winds up being and then some. So that's just a little area to scratch the surface on that. So now we can just turn the page over to sex, shame, and guilt. So everybody go ahead and you can take that for the homework for next week. Sex, shame, and guilt. Everybody's favorite thing. Did your chicken liver die? Did you grow up on a farm? What are some of your most embarrassing things you had happen? Touched by an uncle right here. had homosexual interactions, experimental, touch mine, touch yours. All that little stuff needs to go on this paper. I have to be free of all my secrets. And this thing isn't just about an admission of sins, but it's me being free of my deep, dark secrets. And I need to be free of the things that I say I was going to take to my grave and not tell anybody. And especially the things that to me, it's especially the things that I knew before I did them, that I was going to hate myself for doing them. And I did them anyway, because I could not stop myself. You know, whether I was curious or whether it felt good, felt too good to stop, or whatever it was, I went and did these things. And all those things need to be listed on here. And one thing Greg Oliver taught me early on in recovery is the good thing about this is we can write this in code. You know, you can make your list of those things, and like I can put little 1 or 2 word lines, and I know it'll take me right back to that. Chances are I'm not going to forget it anyway when we got to go talk about it. You know, but to make sure that I have it on paper so that I don't have a convenient excuse to forget about it, it's very important for me to make the list and have the itemized list. And whether it's a long one or a short one, and I'm not talking about the list of every one night stand or every tranny that maybe you had, or every, those one night stands and those just instant gratifications, those can be grouped up into, probably 1 or 2 little groupings. I mean, if you prided yourself on how many hookers you banged, you can just lump that into one thing, right? That's one thing. That's instant gratification for the most part. You're just, I like an old guy in early recovery that I heard, and he shared this all the time when I was brand new. He says, man, I never had sex or made love to a woman. I just masturbated inside of them. Think about that shit. Think about that. Did we really make love? Were we really connected? Or were we just damn near could have done the same thing with a full-blown magazine laid out on the bed or whatever and accomplished about the same damn thing? And getting connected with being able to, make love and just get ours. So it is important to itemize those kind of things. Here's the questions. And just like because this is kind of a little bit of a grouping of how it has it towards the end of the step working guide, the sex, shame, and guilt. There was was I sexually harmed? So we got that list of people doing to us. Who was the person that harmed me? How did it make me feel? I was touched by an uncle-in-law, and got aroused. Hand got reached down the sleeping bag when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And it felt good, and I kind of liked it. But I also knew at the same time I was also such a chronic liar at the time. After it happened, I knew I couldn't tell nobody because nobody was going to believe me over this dude. And it also left me the feeling, well, maybe I might be gay. I didn't know because I was thinking of if I was straight, because I mean all those things start, when you're like 8 and 9, you don't really know all that much. But as you start getting a little older, it's like 10, 11 years old, and you're remembering all this stuff. It's like, man, what's wrong with me? That shouldn't even work. Why was I even turned on? Does this, I always had interesting girls, but they weren't really handy. That happened, and I wasn't even looking for it. It was just a weird situation. But it did happen, and it did make me feel a little insecure about my sex area at the time for a minute. Which I overcompensated with being even more the tough guy at school and beating up more people and taking out my anger and frustration on more people. That's kind of the answer to number 4. How did I react is what I did. I stuffed it down. I didn't tell nobody because I knew nobody was going to believe me about it. And the selfish side of that is that even late into life, I never said anything about it, which only made it more possible for that person to do that shit to other people. And it never even crossed my mind that I should have been the one, especially later on in life, to stop this guy, And I actually saw the dude probably at 3 years clean. And it had somebody died on that side of the family. It wasn't even blood family. It was like the in-laws, the brother of my uncle's divorced wife, right, kind of thing. And I saw this dude, and he just looked like a miserable, disgusting troll. And I felt sympathy for him at that time. I'd already worked through the steps on that point, and at that point there was really nothing else I could do. I mean, would injure them or others, bring more harm. Chances are this dude wasn't getting near nothing anymore anyway. It wasn't my place to enforce justice or bring it up. So I just forgave the sick dude. I mean, it's just all there was to it. But that's part of what the fourth and fifth step's about, is crossing the bridge from, resentment and anger, which is what it turned into for me, to forgiveness and understanding. So that was number 5, crossing that bridge to forgiveness and understanding. And that's an important part too, that we'll talk about a little bit more in the fifth step side. But crossing that bridge from resentment and anger for people that have done things to us, to understanding that we're all just human beings looking for something to make us happy. There's sexual deviants out there. There's drug deviants. There's money deviants. There's people we're deviants in all sorts of different ways out there. But we all have some kind of sickness that makes us do the things that we do. Many people don't understand my disease of addiction and why I do the things that I do or have done. And why don't you just stop? Can't you see that's destroying your life? Just stop, or just do a little bit and leave the rest. Stay away from the hard stuff and just do this and do that. I mean, people don't understand us. I didn't understand the pedophile, sorry, I didn't have that disease. Am I glad that I got the disease I got instead of the disease he's got? Grateful as hell. I mean, that's just one more thing that I'm just grateful that I got dealt the hand of cards that I did instead of somebody else's hand. And I kick some dirt on it, forgive it, and keep it pushing. So the next question here, number 1, did I harm others sexually or abusively? Complete a page for each person. And I had lots of little plans and things that I'd intended to do. And thank God the couple really bad ones, things happened and God intervened and I couldn't do it. Or there would have been a few more things on my little list of things that I did. And I'm not going to get into that on video, but it could have happened. I like to think that, and one of the reasons I don't trust any human being 100% is because I believe that given the right situation, every human being is capable of the exact worst there is and the best that there is. That it's all within us, given the right situation, the right circumstances, that we can do things. I've proven to myself I can do some things that I hate myself for doing, so I have to kind of get around the corner on some of those things. Number 2, who is the person that I harmed? Again, you can write that stuff in code. If there was multiple ones of it, you could probably just take this and put most of this just on one page. I don't see that you got to really make a whole bunch of pages. Just get to the point, get it listed down on paper so that you know what it is, so that when you sit down with somebody to do the fifth step, that you can bring it up. You don't got to do the play-by-play of, who was pitching and who was catching and who was receiving and who was. We don't want to hear all. We don't need all that kind of stuff. Whether the peanut butter game with your colleague went sour. We don't need all of that kind of stuff. But we do some stuff around here. I've listened to a lot of fifth steps, and believe me, yeah, it can. We do some stick stuff around here, trying to trip that instant gratification lever. Trying to, especially like the tweakers, man. That tweak stuff when you're on day like 4 and 5, we do some pretty kinky, bizarre shit out there trying to get that last little nut here and there. And usually it's only that really twisted shit that gets us to that level of where it finally works, right? So if anybody should understand that those kind of things, we should. So I did I identify with those kind of things, because just because I didn't do things doesn't mean that I didn't at one level or another have a fantasize about doing those things. Things that you fantasize about, think about that. Stuff, even that kind of stuff. Thank God I'm not guilty of just my thinking, because man, I still have some pretty crazy shit that goes on upstairs, but I hold myself accountable to what I act on today. I can't control what goes through the big screen of my forehead, but I can control what I do with it, and whether I decide to redirect my thinking to something better or whether or not I want to keep playing with that fantasy. Anyway, can I see myself as a spiritually or emotionally sick, lost human being back then? Yes, I can. What action can I take to forgive myself? There's a lot of different things, especially bringing up more harm. Some things have to be brought up in the ninth step, eighth and ninth step, on how to deal with some of those kind of things of people that we may or may not have harmed back in the day. And there's not a hard and fast rule about how to do that kind of stuff. We'll discuss that more when we get to the ninth step. Right now, I want to just kind of stick to getting this 4-step done. Now listing, we wrote it on there too, listing code if necessary, any other situations that you felt guilt or shame about that you need to make peace with. I stole grandma's wedding ring and hawked it so I could go buy a sack, those kind of things that bring us the shame and guilt. We lied about it and blamed it on our brother and said this person did it. That kind of like going and stealing the dope and helping your dope dealer look for it, or all those kind of little things. I didn't have shame over those kind of things, but stealing from my grandma, my great grandma, I had extreme guilt over that kind of stuff because they never did nothing to me but love me. And doing those kind of things to them really lowered my self-esteem, and I did find a way to make peace with those exact things later on in the ninth step as far as making amends goes. So let's get on with that. That right there will complete the 4 steps, writing those little lists. It's not rocket science. We're just itemizing those kind of things. And then we get into the 5th step, which on the next thing. In the basic text, I'm going to read it out of here first. Man, I don't even have my page itemized.
We're on step 5, right?
Yeah. Step 5, yes. All right, see you. There we go. All right. Step 5 on page 31. Everybody there with me? All right. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. The 5th step is the key to freedom. It allows us to live in the present. Sharing the exact nature of our wrongs sets us free to live. After taking a thorough 4th step, we deal with the contents of our inventory. We are told that if we keep these defects inside us, they will lead us back to using. Holding on to our past would eventually sicken us and keep us from taking part in our new way of life. If we are not honest when we take a 5th step, we will have the same negative results that dishonesty brought us in the past. It's like lying to a computer. We can't expect to get the right information if we give all the wrong information to it, right? So what good is lying about our 5th step? That's the whole point in the first place. And starting off in the beginning with this thing too, we can save the worst nuggets for last, And for me, that's what I've experienced with most people. Like all the 5th steps I do, I usually share a lot of my nasty cheese with the guy that I'm listening to their 5th step, and it helps free me more up from the things that I've experienced that I said I'd never tell anybody with. It gives me more freedom. So I'm taking the worst of my past and I'm using it to be good for the present, and it makes the guy that's sharing it with me feel a little bit more relieved about it. Step 5 suggests that we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We look at our wrongs, examined our behavior patterns, and started to see the deeper aspect of our disease. Now we sit with another person and share our inventory out loud. Our higher power will be with us during our 5th step. Hopefully we pray before we start doing that. We will receive help and be free to face ourselves and another human being. It seemed unnecessary to admit the exact nature of our wrongs to our higher power. God already knows that stuff, we rationalized. Although he already knows, the admission must come from our own lips to be truly effective. Step 5 is not simply a reading of step 4. For years, we avoided seeing ourselves as we really were, right? I've got the way I think I am, legend of my own mind, the person I portray to everybody else that I am, and then deep down in my gut, I know the scumbucket I really am. People would come to the rooms, and my first feelings when I first came to NA meetings are like, oh, we'll love you till you can love yourself and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, if you knew the shit I did, you wouldn't even be sitting next to me. This is how I felt. We were ashamed of ourselves and felt isolated from the past or from the rest of the world. Now we have the shameful part of our past trapped. We can sweep it out of our lives if we face it and admit it. It would be tragic to write it all down and shove it in a drawer. These defects grow in the dark and die in the light of exposure. Before coming to Narcotics Anonymous, we felt that no one could understand the things that we had done. We had feared that if we ever revealed ourselves as we were, we would surely be rejected. Most addicts are uncomfortable about this. We recognize that we have been unrealistic in feeling this way. Our fellow members do understand us. Not everybody did all the same stuff around here. Some are sicker than others. Some were overachievers, and some just, had a little bit more normal time growing up than others. Because addiction is an equal opportunity disease. It hits everybody, whatever moral fiber we may have or may not have. We must carefully choose the person who is to hear our fifth step. We must make sure that they know what we are doing and why we are doing it. First time I came around NA in late 82, I'd hear people sharing about how they just found a drunk guy on the bus stop in a bus and rode around in the bus and told their fifth step to them. And you might as well just go to a confessional. Even a confessional would probably be even better than that, because at least then you got privacy that can't be subpoenaed. But the whole point of this is having somebody that knows what we're actually trying to accomplish by this, because we're trying to go through this inventory to find out what's blocking us off from having a working relationship with a power greater than ourselves and the people in our lives, and what better than a person that has already removed most of those blocks and knows how to get to the other side of those blocks in order to help us do those. So just a stranger or just any Joe Blow off the street is probably not the wisest idea. Anyway, although there is no hard rule about it, the person of our choice, it is important that we trust the person. Only complete confidence in a person's integrity and discretion can make us willing to be thorough in this step. Some of us take the fifth step with a total stranger, although some of us feel more comfortable choosing a member of Narcotics Anonymous. We know that another addict would be less likely to judge us with malice or misunderstanding. Once we make the choice and we are actually alone with that person, we proceed with their encouragement. We want to be definite, honest, and thorough, realizing that this is a life and death matter. We can't bullshit ourselves about the value of this thing. Some of us tried to hide a part of our past in an attempt to find an easier way of dealing with our inner feelings. We may think that we have done enough by writing about our past. We can't afford to make this mistake. This step will expose our motives and our actions. We cannot expect these things to reveal themselves or go away. Hopefully we stick our head in the sand and they go away like other things we hope will go away. Our embarrassment is eventually overcome and we can avoid future guilt. We do not procrastinate. We must be exact. We want to tell the simple truth, cut and dried as quickly as possible. There is always a danger that we will exaggerate our wrongs. We want to be the best dope fiends around, so my story's got to be better than whoever's telling me theirs, right? It is equally dangerous to minimize or rationalize our part in past situations. After all, we still want to sound good. As accurate a description as we possibly can. What we're looking for is the truth, what we actually did, not what we thought, not exactly what we felt, but what it was that we did in most of these situations. Feelings are secondary, but we definitely want to be as accurate as you can about what the actions were. Addicts tend to live secret lives. For many years, we covered low self-esteem by hiding behind phony images that we hoped would fool people. Unfortunately, we fooled ourselves more than anyone else. Although we often appeared attractive and confident on the outside, bullshitting everybody around us, we were really hiding a shaky, insecure person inside. The bigger the badder we are, the more scared and insecure we are on the inside. I can tell you that from the truth. The more scared I was, the more angry I put everything out on the outside. The masks have to go. We share our inventory as it is written, skipping nothing. We continue to approach this step with honesty and thoroughness until we are finished. It is a great relief to get rid of all our secrets and to share the burden of our past. Usually, as we share this step, the listener will share some of his or her story too. We find that we are not unique. We see that by the acceptance of our confidence that we can be accepted just as we are. We may never be able to remember all of our past mistakes. We do, however, give it our best and most complete effort. We begin to experience real personal feelings of spiritual nature. Where once we had spiritual theories, we are now begin to awaken to a spiritual reality. So we're actually starting to get something is what it's talking about. This initial examination of ourselves usually reveals some behavior patterns that we don't particularly like. However, facing these patterns and bringing them out into the open makes it possible for us to deal with them constructively. We cannot make these changes alone. And that's one of the reasons right there why I always say the Serenity Prayer in the we version. I don't, even when the group is saying it in the I version, you'll hear me, I say it in the we version. Because I cannot even change myself without your guys' help. I can't do any of this by myself. I don't do shit very productive, but we do a lot of stuff really well together. We will need the help of God as we understand him and the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. Happily ever after the end. And I got a little something in here. So after I did my fifth step, way back when the dinosaurs were still walking, anyway, I was told to go and redo my fifth step again with God out in nature. And I just went to Piccoli Park up there on Alta and found myself a nice little park bench next to a barbecue where I could burn the shit when I was done with it. I got permission from my sponsor to burn my 4 steps. Some people swear you hang on to the 4 steps so you can have a reference guide. Ain't nothing I wrote that I don't remember every bit of. I remember it all. So it's not going to go away simply because I burn it. But my fear of why I wanted to burn it, because there was no sense in me going and working all these steps to restore all these relationships in my life to get pasted by somebody on my chopper going down the road and die and then have my little girl and my grandkids, or I didn't have grandkids back then when I did this, or any other family member that goes through all my personal belongings and read through all the stuff after I become this good guy and find out, oh, fuck, grandpa was a real dirtbag, you know. Nobody needs to see this shit once we're done. Some people like to have the 4 step to make their 8 step resentment list later on. Again, I'm not going to forget any of those things. I can spit out that list at any given moment once I pray and put the pen to paper. So I know who I owe amends to. I don't need that for the reference. I've argued that with people. I'm not saying you can't do it that way. I'm just saying that for me to take that, and I remember when I was younger, in my early 20s, and did a 4 step. I hung on to one so I could look at it later on. I did another one and looked at it and just kind of compare it. And for me, it was I was looking for something in it that really simply wasn't there. I was still trying to figure out my problem. Reality is that we get a vague idea of what our problem is, and we get our way into living our way into the solution. And step 6 and 7 is where we get out of a lot of these things. But anyway, it says right in here, it says admitted to God. This chapter on step 5, and it works how and why, answers the question about why we must admit the exact nature of our wrongs to God, in addition to admitting them to ourselves and another human being. In NA, we experience a new way of life where the spiritual meets the everyday, where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. When we admit the exact nature of our wrongs to God, to the God of our own understanding, our admission becomes more meaningful. And that was very true for me. Sitting on that park bench that afternoon after I got done doing my 5th step with my sponsor helped bring a lot of revelations to really just how selfish I was, and how all this resentment and anger stored up inside me just wasn't really serving me anymore, and how I really needed to get around the corner of understanding and forgiveness and cut some suckers a break. I mean, I resented people for the very things that I did to other people. It's crazy. Dope fiends don't like being dope fiended by other dope fiends. How dare these people do these things to me? I did the same things to everybody. There's not a sin or a crime out there that I haven't thought, planned out, meditated, or wanted to do. So anyway, the point I was trying to get to is that whole sitting on the park that day, sitting at the park bench after doing this 5th step with my sponsor and going through it line by line, like God was sitting in the bench right next to me. It really gave me the feeling that God was there for me. And it also gave me a new insight on just how badly I needed God's help if I was going to gain any kind of victory over this thing. because I was really broken. I was really sick. My thinking most of my life was really, really flawed, but I always believed it was really, really good. And in light of how bad my life really was, I was very arrogant to other people. Like somebody shared in the meeting earlier today, how we could be looking down at somebody else that's living and enjoying life and look at them like losers because they got to go to a pathetic job every day. And we're sitting there, homeless, no job, looking down at people, the hero and the zero thing where I can be in the gutter looking down at everybody else. My head can build a case and make what I'm doing sound great. It can also take and fill myself up with a bunch of bullshit. And this fifth step is about getting an accurate perspective of the state of my soul, my body, mind, spirit, and everything. And after I did that, and I burned each one of the pages out of my fourth step at the barbecue that was there. It was kind of convenient. I planned it that way, and just lit it with a lighter. I was still smoking back then, and put it in the barbecue. And I got home, and he told me, "So when you go home, go ahead and you can go ahead and start maybe you can read up on the sixth step if you'd like to a little bit, but just take a little time to relax." And for the first time in my life, when I walked inside the house, I had a desire for silence and quiet. Prior to that time in my life, I had to have the TV on, the stereo up, midway blasting. There would be, back then it was an old 186 computer. There was always multiple distractions going on in the house most of the time. I couldn't even sleep without the radio at least being on. There had to be something going on because I could not sit still to listen to anything that was between my ears. And when I walked in that day, I was like, I just wanted some peace and quiet. And I could sit there and just talk to God like God was just right there, like I had a new best invisible friend was right there with me all the time. And to this day still, probably 90% of the time when I'm driving around, and you guys know that I drive to Utah pretty much every weekend, and I'd say over 50% of the time, I don't have the radio on. I don't. I like quiet today. I like what's going on upstairs today because it's not all bullshit today. It used to be always a bunch of crazy crap that goes on. I have a lot of really good thoughts that come from here and get up there today. It's not all this and this one down here that's running the show anymore. So it was huge for me to do that on that fifth step. So we got these questions on this step 5 out of the step working guide. I'm going to throw these things around the room just like last week. I want everybody to kind of think that I'm going to ask you, but I'm not going to go around the room. So it's not going to be in order. I'm just going to say the question. I'm going to call somebody's name and give me the quick little 1 minute to 120 second answer, not a 5-minute share. We don't have a buzzer or a bell that's going to go off to tell you to stop. So just try to make the quick little answer so we can get moving on here. So step 5, we admitted God to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, facing our fears. Number 1, do I have any reservations about working the fifth step? Kenny? No? Okay, number 2, do I have any fears at this point? Jerome?
No.
You're lying. You're lying. We all got fucking fears, bro. We all got some kind of fears. But they are talking about the fears of doing a fifth step was what the point is that we're trying to get here. Do I have any fears at this point of sharing it? For me, when I finally did get my fourth step done, it took me a couple of weeks to do it. And I didn't have somebody hold my hand through it, kind of like we were doing this time. It was more like, here, go do this. But when I got it done, man, I couldn't wait. I was like, let's do this thing now. And luckily I had a sponsor who's like, let's do it. It was like 2 days after I told him I was ready, we were in the truck driving around Red Rock, Calico Basin, sharing my fifth step, So we're going to be making plans for doing some fifth steps here too before we're out of here tonight. Moment of silence for those of us who need it. Many of us have said, take our will and our lives, guide us in our recoveries, and show us how to live clean. Keep coming back, it works.